The sea darkens. The voices of the wild ducks are faintly white. In the dark forest a berry drops, the sound of the water. Those were two complete poems from a kind of Japanese poetry known as haiku. To my mind, this is beyond all doubt at once the simplest and the most sophisticated form of literature in the world. For the invariable mark of very great artistry is its artlessness. It looks easy. It looks almost as if it were a work not of art, but of nature. When you're used to Western poetry, the haiku comes as something of a shock. It seems to be no more than a fragment of poetry, awakening anticipations which it does not fulfill. The stars on the pond. Again, the winter shower ruffles the water. It seems to be a poem just begun, but left unfinished. But with a little more familiarity, you realize that haiku poetry excels in one of the rarest of artistic virtues, the virtue of knowing when to stop, of knowing when enough has been said. And there are respects in which this is the secret not only of art, but of life itself. Haiku represents the ultimate refinement of a long tradition of Far Eastern literature, which derived its inspiration from a type of Buddhism known as Zen. Many other arts found their impetus from the same source: painting in black ink, ceramics, architecture, landscape gardening, and even fencing and jujitsu. And the unique quality of Zen Buddhism, and of all the arts which it has inspired, is a profoundly startling simplicity. There is a complete lack of the unessential, and a marvelously refreshing directness. When you realize that the scriptures of Buddhism fill more volumes than the Encyclopedia Britannica with philosophical discourses of the utmost subtlety, Zen comes as a pure and unalloyed relief. It has no ideas, no beliefs, no doctrines, no symbolism. It might be called the religion of no religion, were it not that this might confuse it with a crass materialism or atheism. When one of the great Zen masters was asked, "What is the ultimate principle of Buddhism?" he answered, "A sesame bun." To the same sort of question, another replied, "It's windy again this morning." Another handed the questioner a piece of cake. To look for some sort of deep symbolism in these replies is to miss the point completely, for they are the plainest and most complete answers to the great problems of philosophy and religion. For it's the chief intuition of Zen that the answer to the problem of life, or we might say to the problem of God, is so utterly obvious that one hardly needs even to look for it. According to Zen, the reason why our quest for some ultimate reality is so difficult is that we are looking in obscure places for what is out in the broad daylight. Our trouble is not that we haven't thought about it enough, but that we have thought about it entirely too much. Once again, the art is one of knowing when to stop. As another Zen master said, if you want to see into it directly. But when you begin to think about it, it is altogether missed. Zen answers profound questions with simple everyday facts. It is windy again this morning. But watch out. This is not a kind of sentimental pantheism or nature mysticism. Still less is it a kind of Philistinism, as if to say, stop asking silly questions and get on with your work. The difficulty of talking about Zen is that every attempt to explain it makes it more obscure. Somebody asked the master Bokuju, we have to dress and eat every day, and how do we get out of all that? In other words, how does one put up with insufferable routine? Bokuju answered, we dress, we eat. The questioner said, I don't understand. If you don't understand, replied Bokuju, put on your clothes and eat your food. These answers may seem very prosaic, very matter-of-fact and dry, but haiku is the same insight, the same view of the ultimate reality in terms of poetry. Yet I must warn you again, do not look for symbolism or for a sort of practical materialism. The point is far more obvious than that. In Japanese, every haiku poem consists of 17 syllables, and their extreme brevity makes them peculiarly difficult to translate. To my knowledge, the best translations used in this record are those of R.H. Blythe. I think one of the easiest approaches to an appreciation of haiku is through the realization that a poetry of this kind lies buried in our own poetic literature. For there are quite a number of poems that are remembered only for a single line. A rose-red city, half as old as time. A line in which the poem attained for a single moment to pure poetry, which is something as utterly indefinable as the meaning of Zen. Blythe has made a considerable selection of haiku from English literature, conveniently saving me the trouble of searching around for examples. The tinkle of the thirsty rill, unheard all day, ascends again. The weak-eyed bat, with short, shrill shrieks, flits by on leathern wing, annihilating all that's made to a green thought in a green shade. Some bird from out the brake starts into voice a moment, then is still. In shades, the orange bright, like golden lamps in a green night. The wonder of these few lines is that in each instant they represent a moment of intense perception. I'm sure that every one of us can recall a number of such moments in our lives, moments when we were aware of being alive in an unusually vivid way. I can recollect a glimpse of sunlit pigeons against a dark thundercloud, the sound of cowbells in the mountain silence on a hot afternoon, the noise of a distant waterfall in the dusk, the smell of burning leaves in the haze of an autumn day, the filigree of black branches against the cold blue of a winter sky, the moon hanging like a luminous fruit from a pine bough. And as I describe such moments, I begin almost to speak in haiku. But I feel no desire to elaborate upon them. For the feeling is intense, to the degree that I am not greedy with it, that I do not try to grasp it with my memory for more than a second or two. This is part of the secret of Zen, that life reveals itself most plainly when you do not clutch at it, either with your feelings or with your questing intellect. Touch and go. This is the whole art. That's why our eyes see best when they brush across things and do not stare in a fixed gaze. Everything kept goes stale. And the reason is that whatever is momentous, living and moving, is momentary. Minute by minute, our experience moves along without return, and we are in accord with it to the degree that we move with it, as the mind follows music, or as a leaf goes with the stream. Yet this is to say too much. For the moment we stop to philosophize about it, to make a system of it, we have missed a beat. The greatest of all haiku poets, Basho, put it thus: "When the lightning flashes, how admirable he who thinks not, life is fleeting." This is perhaps a poor haiku, for the very reason that it begins to philosophize, even though it philosophizes against philosophizing. But it only just begins, and this is the point. Being too much against philosophy is just as much an arid intellectualism as being too much for it. Basho is to the point. In the most famous of all haiku, the old pond, a frog jumps in, plop. These lines are said to represent the moment in which Basho's study of Zen came to its sudden fulfillment, when the mystery of the universe was solved in the plop of a falling frog. This state of mind is technically called mushin, literally the state of no mind. This is when we are simply aware of what is, without distorting it by the complexities of self-consciousness, as when, in efforts to get the very most out of life, we not only feel, but feel that we feel, and feel that we feel that we feel. The state of mushin is thus an extremely clear kind of unself-consciousness, where the poet is not divided from his subject, the knower from the known. If and when he speaks about his own feelings, they aren't seen as reactions, but as an integral part of the experience which he records. The scarecrow in the distance, it walked with me as I walked. Sleet falling, fathomless, infinite loneliness. Winter desolation. In a world of one color, the sound of the wind. The evening haze, thinking of past things, how far off they are. The literary form of the haiku is even more rigid than that of the sonnet, which is perhaps the most formal style of English poetry. Not only must it be expressed in 17 syllables or so, but there are a number of traditional restrictions on the subject matter. Haiku must always be written in harmony with the current season of the year, and there is a tendency to adhere to certain customary themes, certain flowers, trees, insects, animals, festivals, and landscapes being the usual occasions of the poems. This makes a classified anthology of haiku rather monotonous reading, unless you jump about haphazardly from one part of the book to another. But strict limitations of form seem to be a condition of great artistry, an essential part of the very art being to see how much can be done with so little. Sometimes a haiku seems to present a rather stilted and conventional Japanesey sort of scene, as this one from Shiki. A willow and 2 or 3 cows waiting for the boat. Or this, if I remember rightly, by Kobori Enshu. A cluster of summer trees, a glimpse of the sea, a pale evening moon. Contrariwise, there are times when the poet seems to outdo himself with ingenuity. A fallen leaf returning to the branch, butterfly. Or this one by Isa. A brushwood gate, and for a lock, this snail. But the best haiku are those which arise from the tension between the rigidity of the form and the intensity of the poetic feeling. Both Chinese and Japanese artists admire beyond everything a certain kind of restraint, an expression which hints rather than states, indicates rather than explains, suggests rather than describes, an art which leaves an enormous amount to the beholder's or the listener's imagination, instead of excluding his participation by a perfection of finished detail. Yet the listener is not expected to fill in the details literally, but to share in the mood which the poem implies. Not a single stone to throw at the dog, the wintry moon. Leaves falling lie one on another, the rain beats on the rain. What is restrained is the temptation of every artist to show off and leave his listener nothing to do but admire. But the haiku poet must at great pains acquire a certain primitivity and unfinishedness of expression which comes off only in a social context where the reader or the listener is also in the know. It is a poetry where the reader is almost as important as the poet, where deep calls unto deep, and the poem is successful to the degree that the reader shares the same poetic experience, which, however, is never explicitly stated. This is not, though, as in the decadent period of Chinese poetry, achieved by an extreme use of literary allusions intelligible only to an exclusive coterie of scholars. What the listener has to be in the know about is not literature, but life. places, seasons, moods, and above all, the utterly indescribable insight of Zen Buddhism. And this has been called an acute perception of the thusness of things, not their goodness or badness, beauty or ugliness, usefulness or uselessness, not even their abstract isness or being, but rather their very concrete thinginess. Sticking on the mushroom, the leaf of some unknown tree. The tree frog, riding the banana leaf, sways and quivers. Walking in the winter rain, the umbrella pushes me back. Evening rain, the banana leaf speaks of it first. I believe that haiku had their origins in anthologies of short quotations from Chinese poems, which the Zen Buddhists compiled for purposes of meditation. One of these puts the quality of thusness a little more philosophically, and therefore to us perhaps more intelligibly, when it says, "If you do not believe, look at September, look at October, the yellow leaves falling, falling to fill both mountain and river." But again, and for the last time, let me say that you must not look here for any symbolism, any idea, either of God revealed in the beauty of autumn leaves, or of just autumn leaves with no God, or of the transiency of life, or anything else. The mysterious and yet obvious thusness of things is clear when you see it directly without asking questions. When Gensha, another old Zen master, was asked how to enter the path of Buddhism, he answered, "Do you hear that stream?" "Why, yes." "There," he concluded, "is the way to enter." And the poet Gochiku put it quite perfectly in a haiku. "The long night, the sound of the water says what I think." The season of spring. New Year's Day, nothing good or bad, just human beings. Spring begins quietly, from the stalks one pace. Click, clack, the man coming walking in the haze. Who is he? Yes, spring has come. This morning, a nameless hill is shrouded in mist. The soft breeze, and in the green of 1,000 hills, a single temple. Ice and water, their differences resolved, are friends again.
打ち解けて、氷と水の仲直り。
Ebb tide. The crab is suspicious of the footprint.
足跡、カニの怪しむ潮干かな。
Tilling the field, the cloud that never moved is gone.
旗打つや、動かぬ雲もなくなりぬ。
Placing his hands on the ground, the frog respectfully recites his poem.
手をついて、歌申し上ぐる河津かな。
The old pond. A frog jumps in. Plop.
古池や、河津飛び込む水の音。
This is all there is. The path comes to an end among the parsley.
これきりに、小道尽きたりせりの中。
The season of summer. The short night. Lights remaining in the harbor.
短夜の、灯火残る港かな。
The billowing clouds piled low along the far line of the sea.
雲の峰、並べて低し海の果て。
The sandy shore. Why are they making a fire under the summer moon?
砂浜や、何に火を焚く夏の月。
A sudden summer shower. The village sparrows hang onto the grasses.
夕立や、草葉をつかむ村スズメ。
How admirable he who thinks not life is fleeting when he sees the lightning flash.
稲妻に、悟らぬ人の尊さよ。
The stones at the bottom seem to be moving. Clear water.
そこの石、動いてみゆる清水かな。
The beggar. He has heaven and earth for his summer clothes.
古事記かな。天地を来たる夏衣。
Beckoning from upstairs to a houseboat. A fan.
二階から、屋根船招くうちわかな。
The melons look cool, flecked with mud from the morning dew.
朝露に、汚れて涼しい瓜の泥。
With the evening breeze, the water laps against the heron's legs.
夕立や水はおさぎのすねを打つ。
An evening shower. The ants are running down the bamboos.
白雨に走り下るや竹のあり。
The sound of the scouring of the saucepan blends with the tree frogs' voices.
鍋磨く音に乱るるアマガエル。
The shell of a cicada. It sang itself utterly away.
声に皆泣きしもてやセミのから。
A trout leaps. Clouds are moving in the bed of the stream.
飛びあゆのそこに雲ゆく流れかな。
I heard the unblown flute in the deep tree shades of the temple of Sumire.
スマ寺や深ぬ笛聞く木立闇。
The season of autumn. Along this road goes no one this autumn eve.
この道や行く人なしに秋の暮れ。
Leaning against the tree, branches and leaves are few, a night of stars.
日によれば枝葉まばらに星月よ。
In the dense mist, what is being shouted between hill and boat?
霧吹かし何呼ばり合う陸と船。
The moon in the water turned a somersault and floated away.
水の月もんどり打って流れけり。
Companion of the tempestuous wind, a single moon rose through the sky.
吹く風の相手や空に月一つ。
I kept hanging the moon on the pine tree and taking it off, gazing at it the while.
月を待つにかけたり外しても見たり。
The autumn breeze is blowing in the wine shop. Fishermen and woodcutters are singing a poem.
秋風や種子にし歌う漁者商社。
The scarecrow in the distance. It walked with me as I walked.
我行けば共に歩みぬとかがし。
In the far depths of the forest, the woodpecker and the sound of an axe.
手をの打つ音もけぶかしけらつつき。
The face of the dragonfly is practically nothing but eyes.
トンボの顔は、大方目玉かな。
100 different gourds from the mind of one vine.
百なりや、つる一筋の心より。
In the dark forest a berry drops, the sound of the water.
木立ち暗く、何の実をつる水の音。
They spoke no word, the host, the guest, and the white chrysanthemum.
物言わず、百頭亭主と白菊と。
The season of winter. Companionless. Thrown away on the moor, the winter moon.
連れもなく、野に捨てられし冬の月。
The angler, his dreadful intensity in the evening rain.
釣り人の情の怖さよ夕しぐれ。
The stars on the pond. Again, the winter shower ruffles the water.
池の星、またハラハラとしぐれかな。
On an umbrella, a patter of raindrops, but it enters next door, the evening darkness.
さよしぐれ、隣へ入る傘の音。
Sleet falling, fathomless, infinite loneliness.
寂しさの底抜けて降るみぞれかな。
There is neither heaven nor earth, only snow falling incessantly.
天も地もなしに雪の降りしきり。
You light the fire, and I'll show you something nice, a huge ball of snow.
君火をたけよ、物見せん雪丸げ。
Why are some icicles long, some short?
何故に長短あるつららぞや。
The winter tempest hid itself in the bamboos and grew still.
木枯らしや竹に隠れて静まりぬ。
Listening that evening to the rain in the mountain.
冬ごもり、その世に聞くや山の雨。
The water bird looks heavy, but it floats.
水鳥の 重たく見えて浮きにけり。
The wind brings enough of fallen leaves to make a fire.
炊くほどは、風が持ってくる落ち葉かな。
Leaves falling lie one on another. The rain beats on the rain.
落ち葉落ち重なりて、雨雨を打つ。
Come now, I will sleep. New Year's Day is a thing of the morrow.
いざやねん。元日はまた明日のこと。